In this lesson, moving forward, I'm going to demonstrate how to create a cluster. So we'll be primarily working with the container engine within the Google Cloud Platform, and I'll demonstrate how to go about creating a cluster using the Cloud Shell. But first, let's just take a look at our existing infrastructure. So let me navigate to the products and services and click on the compute engine just to make sure that our VMs are listed. So at this point, there is no VM for our new project that we created in the previous lesson. So right here is a new project called Claydesk, and of course if I click on the drop down arrow, there are other projects as well. Let me quickly show you before I create the VM instance. So let's click on the project called Site 5757, and notice in this instance you will see a VM called Ubuntu created, and this is something that we've been working on throughout so far in previous lessons. However, when I switch to my new project here, Claydesk 1380, I will need to create another VM instance. So let's go ahead and create an instance. I could of course use the Google Cloud Shell to create the instance just like I did previously, but this time let's go ahead and use the VM instances, and let's click on create instance, and this brings up the name of the instance, and I'm going to call this Claydesk VM, and of course lowercase as well. Alright, zone, I'm going to pick US East 1C, and then the machine type. I can pick any other machine type if I like, and of course it shows me that you'll be charged this much, but we have a free trial, so not to worry. But I can customize this. So if I click on customize, it shows me how many cores I want, the memory I can increase or reduce. So I'm going to click on basic view, just leave as is. The boot disk is the type of VM I want to use, so I'm going to go ahead and click on change, and I'm going to use the Ubuntu 16.04 LTS. That's the one that we used for our other projects as well. Of course, you're welcome to use any one of these if you like. So I'm going to select this, click on select, scroll down. For my firewall, I can add tags and firewall rules to allow specific network traffic from the internet. So I can allow the regular HTTP traffic and of course the secure traffic as well. And once I'm done, simply click create, and it's going to spin off a virtual machine for me. Perfect. So it shows me that it's created the Claydesk VM, zone, the machine type, the internal IP, and of course our external IP address, and I can connect using the SSH shell to this VM. So let me go ahead and in fact click on this, and this brings up the shell window, and I can provide various commands within the shell. Perfect. So just wanted to show you that we can connect to this VM now. So I'm going to close this for now. Click on leave, and of course on my notification, notice it says that it's created a VM instance called Claydesk VM, and its boot disk is Claydesk VM. Alright, so once our VM is created, let's go back to our gallery here. I'm going to click on the container engine. This is where we actually create our clusters, right? So let me get rid of this notifications here. Alright, so right now there's no cluster, and of course if I click on the container registry, which provides a secure private Docker repository storage, nothing is here as well. Great. Let's bring up our Cloud Shell. Okay, now the fun part begins. So let me connect to the Cloud Shell, since we already have a VM created, and we also created a new project. So I'm going to work on the Cloud Shell here. Alright, once we're in the shell, I'm going to go ahead and create a cluster, and that's basically our first step. So what is a cluster, right? It's just a group of different instances. So a cluster consists of, let's say, a single master instance and a set of worker nodes, and the master and the worker node is simply a compute engine virtual machines, and the number of worker nodes is specified at the time of creation of this cluster. So I can tell Google Cloud that I'm interested in creating 5 instances that work within this cluster. or 10 or whatever. In order for me to create a cluster, let's first go ahead and verify and take a look at our time zones. So I'm going to say gcloud compute zones list, and it's going to go ahead and show me the existing zones. So let me go ahead next and set a zone. So I'm going to go ahead and do our gcloud command and config set compute zone. And by the way, we set the zone already for the VM, right? I can always change it if I need to. And this zone is going to be US Central. All right, I'm going to pick Central 1. Make sure our spellings are correct for Central. And this is going to be -A, right? That's the one I'm going to pick. Hit the enter key. All right, so it sets the time zone. And next, obviously, is the command to actually go ahead and create the cluster. All right, so to create the cluster, I'm going to say gcloud. Make sure my spellings are correct again, right? Container, the word clusters with an S, create, and then of course the name of the cluster that I want to create. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say it's called Claydesk-1, or maybe say Claydesk-app, right? All right, so gcloud container, make sure my spellings are correct again, right, before I hit the enter key. So this is going to be ANIER. All right, great. So gcloud container clusters create, and then of course the name of the cluster. Now by default it's going to create 3 nodes, and it's going to run on the standard machines, right? NS standard-1. Otherwise I can specify the number of nodes as an optional arguments. So let's hit enter, and the creation of the cluster Claydesk-app begins. Now while this cluster is being created, okay, so you get the big picture, right? You get the idea, right? Kubernetes is going to take these clusters, right, create pods, and pods contain containers, right, those Docker images into containers, and then containers go into pods. And that's how Kubernetes basically manages those containers for you. And it provides like fault tolerance services. You can create labels, and we'll take a look at what those are as we move along, but just so you get the big picture. All right, great. So once our cluster is created, notice it provides a name of the cluster, which is Claydesk-app, the zone US Central 1-A, the master version 1.3.2, and of course provides the master IP address for the cluster, name of the machine, the N1-standard-1, and then the node version, and the number of nodes is 3, right? So here notice it says 3 nodes, and the status is running. So it creates these 3 nodes, or VM instances, in other words. Okay, so if I were to go back to my console and verify by going to the products and services gallery, let's click on Compute Engine, and I should be able to see the 3 VMs, right? So let me scroll down here, bring them up. Perfect. Okay, so here's our original Claydesk VM, right? And these are the 3 that were created for this particular Claydesk-app. And our Claydesk VM was created in the Eastern time zone, whereas our 3 instances for the cluster are in the Central time zone. And of course 3 machines, IP addresses, and I can SSH into each one of these and work with them just like I would in a regular VM. I can also go into the networking area. So for example, let's go to the networking here within the compute section, and this also shows me the networks that I have, right, of all the instances. I can click on, let's say, the IP routes, take a look at the default IP routes here. Firewall rules, I can set those up, and we'll be working with these as we go along, but just to show you and give you an idea of how to go about creating a cluster. And once we have the cluster, then we can put pods within those cluster, right? And pods, of course, contain multiple containers. Great. So in this lesson, I just wanted to show you how to create a cluster using the Cloud Console and the Cloud Shell. So practice, and let's move to the next lesson.